I've always been captivated by the whispered secrets of time-worn pages. As an antique book dealer, there's a thrill in hunting down these ancient relics, each possessing tales not just within their bindings, but in their history. I'd held tomes that had outlived their owners and books that bore the stains of coffee, wine, and tears of generations past. But no book had ever haunted me like the Oblivio Tabula, the Book of Silence. The first time I heard of the Oblivio Tabula was from a fellow dealer named Richard. He called me late one night, his voice shaken. "It's here with me," he whispered. "That book. I can't seem to put it down." I laughed, assuming he had found a first edition of some classic literature. "What book? What's gotten into you?" "The Oblivio Tabula. Stay away from it." Then he hung up. Richard was found the next day in his home, sitting catatonically with the book on his lap. No doctor could explain his condition. He didn't react to any external stimuli, his gaze empty and lost. The story should have ended there, but a week later, another collector I knew, Sarah, called me. "I've got the Oblivio Tabula," she whispered in a manner disturbingly similar to Richard. The next day, she too was found in a catatonic state, the cursed book by her side. I began to investigate, needing answers. Everywhere this book appeared, its readers were left paralyzed, their minds seemingly trapped elsewhere. The book's provenance was vague. Originating perhaps in the 17th century, it had no author's name. Its content, to those brave enough to skim without investing, seemed innocuous, detailing various historical events without obvious connection. I decided I had to see it for myself. My curiosity, always my Achilles heel, pushed all caution aside. I tracked down the book's current holder, a frail old man named Mr. Caldwell. When I visited him, I found his large mansion filled with antiques and books, but the atmosphere was stifling, shadows clinging too tightly to the corners. Mr. Caldwell was seated in a grand armchair, the Oblivio Tabula on the table beside him. I could see it was bound in dark, almost black leather, and its title was embossed in deep gold. "I haven't opened it," he murmured, noticing my gaze. "Not since I saw what happened to my friends." "Why keep it then?" I asked, my gaze fixed on its enigmatic cover. "Because someone needs to ensure it doesn't harm anyone else," he replied. Determined to uncover its mystery without becoming its victim, I proposed studying the book under monitored conditions. In a research facility with doctors and cameras observing me, I would delve into its contents. The parameters were strict. I could study it for 10 minutes at a time, with breaks in between. The first session was uneventful. The book, written in Old Latin, detailed mundane events and places. But something felt off. The words seemed deeper than the page they were printed on, as if they had layers. In the second session, the unease grew. A cold draft circled my feet, and the room's bright lights dimmed and flickered intermittently. The text layers seemed to beckon me, luring me deeper. I could sense there was something hidden beneath the literal meanings, but my time was up. In the third session, I began to decipher the pattern. The events in the book weren't just historical, they were personal, intimately so. One entry spoke of a woman, her face obscured in darkness, waiting at the end of a bed, eerily reminiscent of a night terror I'd experienced as a child. I shared my findings with the overseeing doctor, Dr. Turner. "It's a psychological lure," I told him. "The book adapts to the reader's deepest fears, traumas, and memories. That's why its victims get trapped. They're ensnared in their own darkest recesses." Dr. Turner, a man of science and reason, looked skeptical. "You might be projecting, seeing patterns where none exist. Still, the personal connection is troubling." In the next session, I wore a heart monitor. I delved back in, trying to remain detached, but the book grew more insidious, weaving a tapestry of my life's most terrifying moments. An accident I'd seen as a teenager, the cold touch of a stranger in a crowded train, the choking fear of being lost in a foreign city. It was all there, depicted with unnerving accuracy. The heart monitor beeped rapidly. Dr. Turner instructed me to close the book, but the text had its claws in me. I couldn't. A dark abyss opened up, pulling me in. Visions blurred the line between reality and memories. Each seemed more terrifying than the last. I heard Dr. Turner's muffled shouts, but they were distant, lost in the whirlwind of horror the book conjured. Then suddenly, a hand forcefully shut the book, breaking the trance. Gasping, I looked up to see Mr. Caldwell, his eyes filled with understanding and fear. "You were about to be lost," he said, his voice trembling. "Another minute and you would have been like the others." I felt something was wrong. I had to come. I was shaken, but my mind was clear. The Oblivio Tabula was a mirror to one's darkest psyche, ensnaring the reader in a prison of their own horrors. There was no supernatural entity, no ghost or demon, just the relentless, inescapable terror of one's own memories and fears. "We have to destroy it," I whispered. But as we looked to the table where the book had been, it was gone. In its place was a simple note: some things are not meant to be understood. The Oblivio Tabula vanished that day, but the fear it instilled remains. Out there somewhere, the book waits for its next reader, ready to show them the depth of their own darkness. I can only hope it remains hidden, but deep down, the terror lingers, because the most horrifying monsters are the ones we carry within. I've always been an introvert. Growing up with a passion for writing, my diary became my sanctuary. Through my divorce, the birth of my daughter Mia, and the subsequent struggles of being the single mother, my diary bore witness to it all. Each page was a fragment of my soul, and though it was deeply personal, it was also deeply cathartic. Living in the heart of the city, crime wasn't unheard of, but I'd always felt secure in our little flat on the 7th floor. I figured any burglar would probably prefer easier targets. I'd never been more wrong. It started one evening when I returned home from work. Maya greeted me at the door, her face pale and her eyes filled with unease. "Mom, there's something you need to hear," she whispered, her voice quivering. She played an audio recording from an anonymous podcast platform, and my heart sank. It was my voice, my words, my memories, my fears, but not my voice. It was as if someone had stolen my diary and read it out loud. The voice was distorted, cold, and emotionless. "What? How?" I stuttered, shock rendering me incoherent. "That's not all," Maya said, her hand trembling as she showed me other posts from the same account. It was not just mine. Several other diaries had been read out, their innermost secrets laid bare for anyone to hear. My mind raced. Was this just a prank by some tech-savvy teenagers? But the intimacy of the details, the way the voice reveled in reading each secret, spoke of a more sinister intent. The following week was a blur. Reports of break-ins spread throughout the city, yet nothing of value was stolen from any of the homes. The burglar's only interest was the diaries, and with each new recording, the voice grew more mocking, more menacing. I tried to put it out of my mind. I bought a new diary and started again, ensuring it was locked away securely each night. But every evening, my heart would race as I approached my front door, wondering if we'd been visited by this twisted intruder. One night, after putting Mia to bed, I decided to listen to another of the uploaded recordings. As the haunting voice started, it sent shivers down my spine. There was something eerily familiar about it. It wasn't until the recording reached a particularly emotional passage from one woman's diary that I realized what it was. It was a reflection of a time when her son had almost drowned. I remembered the event. The woman was my friend Sarah. The recognition was like a splash of cold water. My paranoia intensified. I started double-checking the locks. I invested in an expensive security system. But the dread refused to leave. Weeks turned to months. The police were baffled. The burglar left no trace behind, and with no physical evidence, they were chasing shadows. One evening, after Maya had gone to bed, there was a knock at my door. It was Sarah. Her face was as white as a sheet. "Can I come in?" she whispered. She looked terrified. I ushered her in, and she hesitated before speaking. "I think I know who's behind this." She played a voice note from an unknown number. It was that voice again, but this time it was different. "Isn't technology marvelous, Sarah? Reading your secrets was entertaining, but hearing your reactions, that's truly delicious." Sarah's face was etched with terror. "My phone was hacked. This person has been listening to us." Suddenly, everything clicked. The recordings, The eerie familiarity of the voice. It wasn't a stranger. It was an algorithm. A software that mimicked human emotions, able to reproduce our words with chilling accuracy. Together, we approached a friend who was an expert in cybersecurity. He discovered a sophisticated malware embedded in our phones, one that allowed the intruder to not just access our diaries but also our calls, messages, even our very conversations. I completely forgot that I scanned the pages of the diary using the new phone app to convert it into text form for safekeeping. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The police, with the help of tech experts, traced the malware to its source, a seemingly innocuous tech firm that had recently provided a free system update to our phones. The firm was a front for a twisted individual. His perverse joy wasn't in stealing valuables, but in stealing intimate moments, personal vulnerabilities, and then savoring the ensuing horror of his victims. When they finally apprehended him, I saw his face on the news. He was unremarkable, just another face in the crowd. But his eyes, they were cold, devoid of empathy. Those were the eyes of someone who revealed in others terror. That night, as Maya and I curled up on our couch, our home finally feeling secure, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Well played. But remember, you can't escape your shadow. It was a chilling reminder that monsters don't just lurk in the dark. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight. And as technology evolves, so do the methods of those who seek to terrorize. The world felt a lot less safe, and the shadows a lot more ominous. In the years I wore the badge, the streets taught me many lessons. They showed me the darkest corners of humanity. They took me to places few dared to tread. The weight of the badge was heavy, but it was the weight of responsibility. The moment I retired from the force, I chose the taxi life to avoid the emptiness of days without purpose. It was a simple living, but the city's nocturnal rhythm made up for it, until he came along. At first, it was just gossip among drivers at the end of a long shift. Rumors of a passenger, always picked up from the same alley, always late at night. No driver who'd taken him had ever been seen again. I was not one to shy away from a challenge. If a threat existed, I believed I could face it. That's why, when I saw him, standing alone in the cold, dark alley, I felt compelled to pick him up. His silhouette was that of an average man, wearing a broad-brimmed hat and an old-fashioned coat. As he entered the car, the dim light revealed a gaunt face with hollowed eyes that looked like they'd seen a lifetime of sorrow. "Where to?" I asked. "Just drive," he whispered. Following my instincts, I began to cruise the desolate streets, constantly glancing at the rearview mirror. Every turn, every stop, his eyes never left mine. The air grew thick with tension. "Is there a specific destination, sir?" A deep sigh preceded his response. "Does it matter? All roads in this city end in the same place, don't they?" A chill ran down my spine. I knew these streets inside out, every alley, every shortcut, but there was something profoundly unsettling about his words. Despite my years on the force, his ambiguity left me uneasy. To break the suffocating silence, I attempted small talk. "The other drivers, they've been talking about you." "And what did they say?" "That they've never seen anyone who's given you a ride again." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "It's not me they should be worried about. It's the weight they carry, the shadows they can't escape." His enigmatic words haunted me, but it was the hint of truth in them that truly unnerved me. My past had its demons. Cases unsolved, lives lost on my watch, memories of those I couldn't save. Each memory weighed on me like an anchor, pulling me deeper into my own abyss. The drive seemed endless. The streets, once familiar, felt foreign and foreboding. The city's skyline blurred, melting into a dance of shadows. "Do you believe in redemption?" he suddenly asked. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Everyone deserves a chance at it. But what if your chances have run out? What if your time is up? I recalled a cold case, a young girl gone missing, her parents' pleading eyes, their hopes slowly turning to despair as the days turned into years. It was my most significant failure, and it weighed on me every day. I wondered if this was a cruel twist of fate, the universe's way of making me pay for my mistakes. "I did the best I could," I murmured, the weight of regret evident in my voice. He leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. But was it enough? My heart raced, my thoughts spiraled. The city's maze seemed unending, and my once dependable knowledge of its roads had betrayed me. My surroundings became unrecognizable. Suddenly, the car's headlights illuminated a figure in the middle of the road, a young girl, her clothes tattered, her face pale. It was her, the missing girl from the cold case. I slammed on the brakes, my heart in my throat. The stranger beside me let out a soft chuckle. It seems we've reached our destination. Shaking, I turned to face him, but he was gone. The back seat was empty, as though he had never been there. My gaze shifted to the girl, but she too had vanished, leaving only the haunting emptiness of the night. Frantically, I tried to restart the car, but the engine sputtered and died. I was trapped in a labyrinth of unfamiliar streets, the weight of my past bearing down on me. Days turned into nights, nights into days. As I wandered aimlessly, every shadow, every echo of the past taunted me. My mind, once sharp, began to fray. Then, one cold night, I found myself standing in that same alley waiting, hoping to be saved from my torment. A taxi pulled up, and the driver, a young man with hopeful eyes, looked at me with a mix of pity and curiosity. "Where to?" he asked. "Just drive," I whispered.